Hello, I'm Locke, Meredith, and would like to invite you on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is Mona Collins. She's the jury coordinator for the 19th Judicial District Court. Ms. Collins is going to talk to us about the dreaded jury questionnaire you receive, and then at some point, the jury summons. She's going to talk to us about what an important privilege and right it is provided to all of us in the United States and state constitution to be tried by a jury of your peers. She's going to talk to us about the process and the do's and don'ts. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Mona Collins, 19th JDC Jury Coordinator.
One of the reasons I love this firm is that the moment you walk through the doors, you're so much more than business. You're family, which means we're going to fight for you as if you're family.
Most of the people we represent come from past clients who have referred friends, family members, other people they love to us to represent them in the same way we represented the persons who referred them.
We all pull from each other's experiences, knowledge of the law, so that we get you not only a solution to your problems, but the best solution that we can come up with for your problems.
Knowledge is power, and the folks who know what they're doing empower you. They enable you to make the right kind of decisions that best serves you. And that's our number one goal, frankly. Our number one ministry is to serve you. Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have on the show for the first time Mona Collins. Ms. Collins is the 19th JDC Jury Coordinator. Mona, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
For coming in and doing the show. It's an interesting topic, and I know a lot of people will want to hear about it because it relates to the dreaded jury summons and questionnaire. And so bottom line is you kind of run the office.
Yes.
And you were chosen by the judges of the 19th JDC.
Yes, sir.
That's wonderful. And you've been there for how long now?
18 years.
Fantastic.
Yes.
You know what you're doing. I was telling you, I got called up, I don't know, sometime last year, and when I went through the process, got called to Judge Morvant's court. I watched the whole process and was just fascinated at how organized and well conducted and the whole process seems seamless, and so I just wanted to thank y'all for doing your jobs well.
Thank you for that.
Well, sincerely, I mean it. And so, let's go through the process. So explain what happens. They get that dreaded jury questionnaire that nobody wants to get.
Right.
Kind of explain what happens.
Well, we have started a process. Instead of a paper questionnaire, we'll send out a postcard, which instructs you to go online to fill out your questionnaire. And it's just basic questions and, make sure there's no changes since the last time you served or, that you're qualified. If you cannot fill it out online, we'll send you a paper questionnaire, and you have 5 working days to fill that out and get it back to us.
And if you don't get it back to you guys within that time frame, what happens?
Well, we give you a second chance. And if you fail to fill out the questionnaire the second time, then a judge may rule you into court to tell them why. They have that option.
They'll show up, say you need to come to the courthouse
Right.
and talk to the judge.
Right, and explain to the judge why you failed to fill out the questionnaire.
And then the judge can decide whether or not it wants to
judge-
grant you more time or impose any type of fine or penalty.
It's totally up to the judge, yes.
All right. So let's kind of go through the questions that are on the questionnaire.
Well, you have your basic questions, which is also the qualification questions.
Right.
Are you a citizen?
So this is what someone has to have in order to be considered for a jury.
Correct.
All right, the qualifications.
Are you a citizen? Have you lived in the parish for at least a year? 18 years or older to serve. If you're a student of any full-time or part-time, you can opt out of service.
Can I have proof of that?
Yes.
Okay.
70 years or older, you can opt out of service, but I've had many 70-plus-year-olds decide to stay with me.
Can the student opt to do it also?
She sure can.
Okay.
She sure can.
So those
yeah.
are two circumstances. Student, over 70 over?
Right, 70 or older.
Okay, they can serve if they want to, but they
they-
can also say, look, I can't do it right now, or I don't
We
want to
welcome
do it.
them if they want to stay, but at that age 70 or over, they have earned the right to opt out of service.
Okay.
If you're a felon under indictment, you cannot serve. If interdicted, you cannot serve.
Now, what if you've been convicted as a felon? Obviously, the same thing.
Right.
Indicted
Right,
or
if
convicted.
you're a felon or under
Okay.
indictment, yes.
Now, I know in the recent judicial legislation where they were doing reform, they were talking about restoring felons' voting rights. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard about it, but I have not gotten the go-ahead to go ahead and implement that in the
All right.
office yet. Not, and I have to get the go-ahead from the judges.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the rest of the qualifications.
That's basically it.
Okay.
That's basically it. You have to be a citizen, have to live in the parish for at least a year, and you have to be able to read and write and speak the English language as well.
And the only disqualifications, it sounds like, primarily if you don't meet those
Exactly.
required qualifications.
Yes, sir.
And how do you determine if somebody's, if they say, hey, I hadn't been here a year, how do you find out that they actually have been there a
Well,
year?
they have to provide proof that they have lived out of the parish. They have to provide some sort of mailing with a date on it and their old address, to show that they're still getting mail a year, not quite a year outside of the parish.
All right, and the source for the folks who receive that notice questionnaire, what is the source that identifies the folks who are considered?
Well, DMV and voter registration. We get names every 2 years. I update my jury will from the DMV records and the voter registration records.
So if you don't have a driver's license or if you're not registered to vote, you're not going to get called?
You're not going to get called.
Okay, and I know that y'all have contemplated how do we involve a larger
Right.
portion of society.
Right.
What were the other possible sources you considered but
we
ruled
were
out?
looking at unemployment, but that's confidential. We were looking at the utility bills, but as you know, 5 people could live in a house,
Right.
and that the utility bills are only in one person's name, so that really was not a viable option. So we're just sticking with DMV and voter registration. And with this new, the judges got a new system in 2011, the jury system, and we have, I would say, like a 90% or 95% return rate. We have a very good return rate.
I was amazed at how many. I figured, maybe half the chairs would be empty. They were pretty much every one of them full, and that's a big old room.
It holds 400 people, and we have standing room only sometimes.
And that was my next question. So what is the typical size of the jury pool?
Well, it just depends on how many judges are in jury weeks and how many civil judges are on my jury board. Each week is different. I always tell the jurors I can't tell you what's going to happen because each week is unique, and each week is unique in my pool. Sometimes I'll have 550 jurors pulled, and we'll get about 400 because if some qualify and don't qualify, and we have like maybe 5 or 10% that come back unable to deliver. So, but we have a pretty good return rate.
And of the ones who actually receive it, 95% answer the questionnaire.
I would say we have a 95% return rate, yes.
Remarkable. Yeah. And so what is the size of the source of the pot, so to speak? How many folks are represented by those folks on the voter registration and DMV license rolls? Do you know? I
don't know a specific number, but I can tell you that it's a random pull. So I can't tell you that we pull so many minorities and so many, I can't tell you that because it's truly a random pull. And people don't believe that because some people will get a jury summons every 2 years. I had a 92-year-old that got one for the first time, and he stayed with me. So I can't tell you that because it is truly a random pull.
Okay. So. Very interesting. All right, so they fill out the questionnaire, you get them in, you figure out how many possible juries you're going to need.
Right.
What's the next process?
Well, for criminal judges, we need at least 48. You can order more. We have some judges that order 60 every time they're on my board for jury weeks. And we have civil judges that need 36, but they can order more. So I have to have at least have that number for them.
Times the number of trials? Is it 36 per trial?
Per trial,
civil?
or 48 per criminal.
Per criminal. So,
yes.
And what is the typical average amount of trials you're having during the weeks?
Well, I will have 4 to 5 criminal judges on my board, and sometimes I will have all 8 of my civil judges on the board. So it just depends, because a civil judge can have multiple trials. Maybe a trial starting on Monday, that's a 3-day trial, then we'll have another maybe 2-day trial starting on Thursday. So they can be on my board multiple times. And a civil judge they have jury weeks. So they will have a trial set on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because if the trial on Monday doesn't go, they want to clear their docket, so they're going to start a trial on a Tuesday. So we hold those jurors for a week for them.
Okay. And so just because you're called to the jury pool doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be called up that day to be considered for a jury.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
very interesting. And so now you've got all the questionnaires, and then randomly from those, a group is chosen to be getting the summons, show up, and we need to talk to you.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so how is it? Is all of this random stuff by computers?
Everything is random by the computer.
All right, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My guest, Mona Collins, the 19th JDC Jury Coordinator. We'll be right back.
One of the reasons I love this firm is that the moment you walk through the doors, you're so much more than business. You're family, which means we're going to fight for you as if you're family.
Most of the people we represent come from past clients who have referred friends, family members, other people they love to us to represent them in the same way we represented the persons who referred them.
We all pull from each other's experiences, knowledge of the law, so that we get you not only a solution to your problems, but the best solution that we can come up with for your problems.
Knowledge is power, and the folks who know what they're doing empower you. They enable you to make the right kind of decisions that best serves you. And that's our number one goal, frankly. Our number one ministry is to serve you. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm pleased to have on the show for the first time Mona Collins. Ms. Collins is the 19th JDC Jury Coordinator. Mona, again, thank you for doing the show.
Thank you again for having me.
Let's kind of dive back in. So we've talked about the questionnaire, getting info on you, making sure you're qualified to be a potential juror.
Right.
And then you've now selected the number of folks using that questionnaire who need to show up. And it's via a summons.
Yes.
So explain to the folks, they get this thing in the mail and kind of take it from there.
Right. Well, we send out the summons approximately 3 weeks prior to the date that you're commanded to come. I always tease that accepting our party invitation, but in all seriousness, is you're commanded to come.
Right. Order of the court.
Order of the court. And the judges, if you do not show up, the judges have started issuing rules to show cause for you to come in and tell them why you have ignored the jury summons.
And they can fine you in contempt.
They can fine you, they can assign community service, they can give you jail time. It's strictly up to the judge.
And you know of instances based on our conversation where they go out and arrest them.
Exactly, exactly.
So
yes.
it's serious business.
Right,
Well,
right.
let's explain to the folks why this is such an important thing for our whole political system in our country, in our state and city.
Well, first of all, it's your civic duty as an American citizen. And I've had some of the judges say that this is the most important thing you can do for your community besides signing up for armed forces, and it truly is.
It's participation in the system of government.
Right. And I always tell the jurors with privilege, you have responsibilities. So one of your responsibilities as a citizen is to come in and judge your peers when there is a need for a jury trial.
And the reason that this is so vitally important, and it's provided for as a right to folks who are involved in the judicial system, whether it's on the civil side or the criminal side.
Right.
And it's a right provided in the United States Constitution and pretty much every state constitution that I've ever heard about. So it's a very fundamental right because it's enabling the person who's been charged with a crime or someone who's involved in civil litigation to say, I don't want just one person to decide this, even though our judges are great. I want members of my society, my peers, to decide this issue. In essence, those jurors are putting on a robe and the cloak and, so to speak, the hat, the role of a judge.
Exactly.
Very serious.
And no one is exempt. We used to have the judges, lawyers, teachers, firemen. They had an exemption that's no longer available to them. Everyone serves, including our judges at the 19th. I've had several judges sit in jury service, and actually one was chosen to sit on a criminal trial.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
That shocks me.
Judge Johnson was actually chosen to sit on a criminal matter when he was on the criminal bench.
Fascinating. I participated in the federal jury system and the state with Judge Morvat, and it was Judge Petcher.
Yeah.
Well, fascinating, and they differ a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Right.
So you get that summons, and it tells you what?
Where to come, downtown 300 North Boulevard, what time and what date. And when you come in, you go through the check-in process, and
You got security.
yeah, you go through the metal detectors. So, and I always tell the jurors that it may be an inconvenience to you, but it's for your safety as well as ours.
Exactly.
So you go through the metal detector, you come in, you go through the check-in process, then you go through the orientation process, where I tell you the qualifications, disqualifications to be a juror. And I show a short movie, a video that the judges produce, just telling you, giving you a little bit of who the players are in the courtroom and what their responsibilities are and what's expected of you. And it's just to get them a little bit familiar with the process of when they go into the courtroom and put them at ease,
Right, because
when
it's just a taunting,
Right.
daunting.
Right. When you don't know what's going on, and not everybody, it's
Right.
not new to us, but if you've never been to jury service, the courthouse can be a little intimidating.
Absolutely.
So we try and make jury duty as painless as possible, and I always tell them in the orientation, we don't sweat the small stuff, we can work through anything, and we normally do. We have a very, very happy jurors at the end of their service.
And they have access to the cafes.
They do.
And,
They do. And I have books in there in case
Right.
they want to read books.
And they can bring a meal if they want.
surely
They can bring
can.
medicine, all the kind of
Yes.
stuff that they need
Yes.
they're mandated to take
Right.
on a daily basis.
Right.
Then they can do it. And then if somebody's disabled, what happens?
All they have to do is get me a doctor's excuse saying that they're unsuitable for jury duty for health reasons. I don't need to know why, but then I give them a week to get me that. They don't have to produce it right that day.
Got it.
I do give them time to produce that.
Yeah, and I failed to mention, I believe one of the qualifications, and part of the reason you go through them again when you have these 400 or so folks in that jury pool is to remind them this is the criteria you have to meet.
Right.
And one of them is they got to be able to read.
Write and speak the English language, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how do you quantify that?
Well,
Do you make them read, or it's just their statement under oath?
Well, if they fill out the questionnaire, then
Presumes.
they had to read and write, to do that.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right. So you've now got the room of folks. They're kind of sitting around. I know we sat around for a little while, and explain to the folks what's going on when they're sitting in the jury pool room.
Well, on Monday mornings, I orientate them and get them familiar with what's going on and impanel them into what judges they're going to see. But Monday mornings, the judges are still having their morning dockets.
Right.
So they sit with me a little while the judges finish up business.
And oftentimes, for the trial at issue, there's kind of pre-trial events going on and discussions and conferences.
Yes. The judges are never just sitting around. They're
Right.
having their morning dockets, or they're getting ready for
They're
this
working.
trial. Right.
And sometimes that actually results in the matter being resolved,
Either a
and not
plea or
needing the
settlement.
jury.
Yes.
So it's a very productive time, even though the potential juror sitting there in the jury pool room,
Right.
it's a very positive thing that they're there,
Right.
because
And
that's kind of where the rubber hits the road.
Right, and I always tell them if they don't get to see the inside of a courtroom, don't feel like they wasted their time. The fact that they're showing up for jury service helps us move the dockets along, because if I had no jurors to send, everybody would want to go with their trials.
All right, so now you've impaneled the folks for the various judges, kind of chopped up your big group of folks.
Right.
And then what happens? The judge
I
calls
wait
them
for
up.
instructions, yes, either
Okay.
to send them to lunch or have them come up and begin voir dire, the jury interview process
Okay.
with the judges. And sometimes the judges will call them up and explain to them what the cases are about and then release them for lunch to come back. But they've gotten that portion out of the way.
And every judge is unique in the way they handle.
Different. Every 15
Right.
judges, 15 different ways.
Okay. One thing that I'm sure comes up all the time is I'm missing work. This is costing me money.
Right.
Do you guys pay me?
Right. $12 a day before
A day, not per hour.
Not per hour. $12 a day, 16 cents a mile. And that $12 a day is not meant to supplement your salary, but it is meant to provide you with something to get a meal downtown and things like that. We can't pay you what you would make at your job, but it is a little something.
So let's say they turn to their employer and say, "Look, dude, Mr. Employer, I didn't plan on doing this. Frankly, I don't want to do it.
Right.
You should pay me." Is the employer obligated to pay you?
For one day. If they're permanent full-time employees, if they're
Okay.
temporary or part-time, they're not obligated to pay them.
Okay, and that's provided by Louisiana law.
I think it's 23-965, Louisiana statute 23-965.
All right.
And I provide them with that law when they check in.
Now, it's extraordinarily important when they get that summons to show up that they notify their employer. Explain why.
Well, you know, the teachers, for instance, you have to get a sub. Everybody has to make arrangements that you're not going to be in the office. And I send the summons out 3 weeks prior to the date they're to show up, which gives them ample time to receive it, ample time to let the employer know, or to call us for a postponement.
All right, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke, Meredith with Legal Lines. My guest, Mona Collins, 19th JDC jury coordinator. Be right back.
One of the reasons I love this firm is that the moment you walk through the doors, you're so much more than business. You're family, which means we're going to fight for you as if you're family.
Most of the people we represent come from past clients who have referred friends, family members, other people they love to us to represent them in the same way we represented the persons who referred them.
We all pull from each other's experiences, knowledge of the law, so that we get you not only a solution to your problems, but the best solution that we can come up with for your problems.
Knowledge is power, and the folks who know what they're doing empower you. They enable you to make the right kind of decisions that best serves you. And that's our number one goal, frankly. Our number one ministry is to serve you. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, again pleased to have on the show for the first time Mona Collins. She is the jury coordinator for the 19th Judicial District Court. Mona, let's dive back in. We were kind of talking about folks going, wait a minute, $12 a day ain't very much, and so turning to their employer and saying, you got to pay me. Employees only got to pay one day if they're full-time, permanent employees. Right. What happens if the employee says, well, the heck with this, I'll go, but you know, I'm not happy about it, whatever, and the employer gets ticked off for whatever reason, says, look, dude, just go get another job.
We had a call last week that someone was let go because of jury service. I advised them to contact an employment attorney, and I provided them again with a copy of the law where you cannot take adverse recourse with the person that serves jury duty. So, but they have to contact an attorney. There's nothing I can do. I can just provide the law to them, but it is the law.
And what I read is, and tell me if I'm incorrect, is that the employer might only have grounds to do so if they didn't get reasonable notice that the juror was going to be mandated away from employment for the process.
Exactly. You can't let them know on Friday that I have jury duty on Monday, because you get the summons in enough time to
What you indicated was, what, 3 weeks?
3 weeks,
yes.
3 weeks, yes.
Okay,
yes.
all right, well, just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
All right, so let's shift gears again. So let's say the panel gets called up, and it's typically what? You said the certain panels, whether it was criminal, civil, were usually certain sizes.
Criminal will get 48 unless the judge requests more. A civil will get 36 unless the judge requests more.
Okay. And so in that case, and let's talk about the different kinds of juries there are. Okay. They have the civil juries, you have the criminal juries, and then you have the grand juries. And this pool that you pull in from license and voter registration serves all of those jury functions.
Yes, they do.
Explain the civil jury compared to the criminal jury.
Well, when I pull jurors, I don't pull for a civil or a criminal. We're a court of general jurisdiction, so civil and criminal will come from that one main pull like of 400 people. Now, grand jurors are pulled separately. A judge can determine how many jurors are pulled to fulfill a grand jury. Normally it's 100. That's what most of the judges go with. Well, they will pull 100 jurors for grand jury, and they'll choose from that pool.
Okay. Let's talk about the hats or the roles that the jurors play in each of those different types of trials. A civil trial, their role is what?
To determine fault, basically.
They're basically the judge, and they're deciding if somebody messed up and if damages are owed and how much it is.
Exactly. So they're basically who's at fault. Yeah.
And they are instructed by the judge what the law is, but they apply the law as they received it, as it was read to them by the judge, to the facts that they've heard from the witnesses, the experts, the parties involved, the arguments of the lawyers, and then they decide. And their decision, depending on whether it's a civil trial or a criminal trial, requires, it can be 9 out of 12 for the civil scenario, 12 out of 12 for criminal.
Right.
All right. So that's the role in a civil case. And in a criminal case, basically they're deciding what?
Innocent or guilt.
Again, judged,
Yes.
listening to the facts, witnesses, experts, and deciding whether or not they're guilty of the crime that they've been charged with, and who does the sentencing.
The judge. The judge does the sentencing.
All right.
Yes.
And then the final jury that we've discussed is the grand jury. And that's a different function entirely from these two.
Right.
Explain to the folks what the grand jury is.
Grand jury is, they decide whether or not to bill a case. And if they're going to bill a case, and when I say bill a case, formally charge, and they decide if what the charge is appropriate, or if they want to, if maybe they think something lesser, you know,
All right.
lesser
And
charge.
so in that scenario, in essence, they're wearing the hat almost of the prosecutor who's looking at the information and deciding whether or not they believe a crime was committed.
Right.
And again, they're playing a role of weighing the information and the facts. Now, the difference between a grand jury and the civil and criminal jury is in a grand jury, they only hear one side of the case. Well,
Exactly.
Only one party, and that's the prosecutors.
Right, and their service is 8 months to a year unless they're extended. A petty jury serves five or more days, but you know, if the case goes 2 weeks, they'll serve 2 weeks. They won't get another jury in. But a grand jury, their date is set 8 months to a year to finish.
And they meet weekly usually?
They meet weekly. If there's something to meet on, they will meet once a week.
Okay.
And we have 3 grand juries.
Is their pay any different?
No.
Exact same pay?
It's the exact same pay.
And so the length of time that you may be required to be a juror in the civil or criminal matter, frankly, could take as long, but doesn't.
Right.
It's usually,
It's a lot
average of about a
shorter.
week.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2,
Yes.
but rarely over that. And the grand jury, they're there for the whole year potentially.
Right, exactly.
On a weekly basis. That's a
Exactly.
heck of an obligation
Yeah.
to be pulled into.
But I get a lot of good feedback.
That's
from,
great.
Yeah, from the jurors.
I'm glad to hear it. All right, so we've explained the type of juries. Let's talk about, all right, so you now the judge calls the jurors into his courtroom. They're seated all, filling up all the kind of the bystanders and seats in the background. And he calls up how many potential jurors?
We have 14 seats available. So normally the judges will fill up the 14 seats, and that's in the jury box to be questioned.
And you only need 12 jurors, so why 14?
Well, you need 12 jurors, but you may have 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 alternates. I think you can do up to 14 alternates, but most judges will do 1 or 2 alternates.
Okay.
Unless it's a big case that's going to last 2 or 3 weeks.
And so all of those folks are called up, 13, 14, maybe 16 max, and the judge explains to the potential jurors their roles.
Right, exactly.
And he gives them a lot of detail and
Yes.
big, broad understanding of the
Yes.
process. And then he does what's called, what I refer to as a judge's board hour, where he's basically asking them basic questions
Right.
that he wants to know the answer to, and both parties to the litigation want to know the answer to decide whether or not they think that jury, that
Right.
particular person, would be a good juror for the facts and issues in their case.
Right, and the lawyers get to question the jurors as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so the lawyers get to question, and then there's what's known as challenges for cause, or peremptory challenges. And for cause are unlimited, and it's because it's real clear that a juror is so biased or
Right.
incapable of being fair
Right.
that they can't render a decision.
Right.
The judge kicks them off.
Right.
And then you have limited number of peremptory challenges, and it's just because you just don't think that juror's the right mix,
Right.
but you don't have, it's an obviously blatant reason
Right,
for the
exactly.
exclusion, but those are limited.
Yes.
All right. So you go through that process. Let's say you pick, 4 of the 14, you got 10, they'll call it 4 more people, and you just kind of keep going through the process
Right.
until you get the 12 jurors and then the alternates.
Well, they'll call up a fresh batch of 14. The ones that are tentatively chosen, they normally sit them in the jury room, and then they'll call
Right.
up 14 more jurors. So.
All right, and so the bottom line is they're shooting for the 12 and get the 2 to 4 alternates.
Right.
And you got your jury.
Right.
All right. And then the trial begins.
Yes.
All right. What happens if they get challenged and they're booted off of that potential jury selection process?
They're asked to return to my office for me to give them further instructions on whether I need them for another trial or to be released.
All right. And Typically, that takes a while, but sometimes you get going. Mona, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
Appreciate
having
you
me.
being back on the show. This is Locke, Meredith with Legal Lines. Mona Collins, jury coordinator for the 19th JDC. Thanks for being with us.